All right, back out here in the shop today, and I've been reading all the comments. A lot of people want to see the Chevette, get to work on it, but I'm not doing that today. I'm still trying to figure out the tuning on this thing to be able to get my turbo hooked up. So, working on the Belair again. Gonna get this thing up in the air. Since I put these stickier tires on it and the 6-speed, I've noticed the handling has really went downhill. I'm going to be working on the control arms in the front, and I got some new bushings for the rear because these are all, as far as I know, original bushings and they're pretty wore out. So I've got some polyurethane bushings for the rear, and in this box are some control arms, which are the same ones that are on this car, and they're supposed to change the caster and all that, make them better. Can't really see them, but they're little tubular guys down there. So we'll get this thing up on the lift, get the wheels off, and get started. Here are the new control arms for the front. The other lower one is in the box still. So got the new ones here. Got the old ones on here. The bushings, I don't know about the top one. I know the lower one, the bushings look pretty bad. You can't see them on here. But since I'm going to have to get this thing realigned anyways, I think I'll go ahead and cut another half a coil or so out of these springs to go ahead and lower it a little bit more while we're at it. Here's where I'm at so far. The shock nut up top is stuck. So I got the ball joint off the top, which tightened up the shock, so maybe I'll be able to spin that once I get this jack put back underneath it. And these cars, for some reason, they have like an upside down ball joint in the bottom. Get from this side. So the spindle has to go down to get it off, so there's no spring pressure on it. So every time you want to take it apart, you have to use I have to use a pickle fork. There might be another way out there that I don't know about. But the top one, I just smacked this with a hammer right here, and that popped that loose. But the bottom one, there's no pressure on it for it to pop loose. So now I'm going to jam this in there, hit it with a hammer, take the spindle off, and then try to get this shock off without hitting myself in the face with a spring. Here is the old lower control arm. And there's the old bushings. They're pretty hard and dry. So hopefully the new ones will be a little tighter. Be glad to get rid of this thing, get the new shiny one put on as soon as I figure out what to do with my shock. Probably going to have to cut it in half just to get it out. Been wanting to get some newer shocks anyways, so I'll probably just get the cutoff wheels, cut that off. And while I'm at it, go ahead and cut another half a coil off of this spring. These were already cut. I've cut one coil off of them already. So we'll cut a little more, get it sitting a little lower like it used to. All right, here's where we're at right now. Got this side pretty much back together. Just got to throw the tie rod and the brakes back on it. I had to cut the shock in half, so I'll have to order some more of those and put them in there. But yep, looks awfully fancy in there now. I'm gonna have to paint the frame or it's gonna look out of place. Okay, it's been a couple days since the last clip I recorded where I was putting it back together, and I said that I'd cut a half a coil out of the springs. And you can see by what the car looks like now that is way too low. The tires are just hitting the inner fenders, and the oil pan keeps smacking the ground and the cross member. So only thing I can figure is that the control arms must have added some drop to it, like they had a lower spring pocket or something in them, because I only cut out a half a coil, so I would assume that wouldn't have lowered the car for 4 or 5 inches. So got some new springs on the way, but while those are coming, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the back, get the new bushings put in, and so whenever the new springs get here, we can get those put in and then get this thing sent out to get aligned. Okay, got it up in the air. I thought this had bushings for everything, but it does not have bushings for the panhard bar, so we might try to figure something else out for those later on. Some of these are going to be kind of fun to get to, like the little nut that's up in there. Might have to relocate my lift arm so I can get my wrench in there. And then this upper one, that one on the axle's not too bad, but that one up there is right behind the exhaust pipe, so you can't get it out. And even if you could, the bolt goes right into the side of the spring pocket. So to take that off, you have to come up in here, oops, right there, take those 3 bolts off, and hopefully this whole bracket will come off and I can put it in the vise and do it that way. So get my jack under here to hold the rear end up, and probably start with this top one because it looks like it's going to be the worst one. Alright, this is the upper control arm. I got it out. These bushings, if you look, they're not really, the bolts don't really go through the middle anymore. They're all pulled to one side. So that probably wasn't helping the way it drove. I'm going to get these out with these, replacing them with these polyurethane bushings here. And according to the instructions, all you got to do, heat this up. I'm going to use a little propane torch and heat that up until it starts smoking, and then you should be able to push the rubber right out, then clean it and grease it up and put the new polyurethane bushing in. You're good to go. Okay, got the upper control arm back in, new bushings in there, got the panhard bar off so we could line the rear end back up, and now we've got the shocks unhooked so we could get the springs out, which are over here. We're going to try cutting these, just one coil off of these to lower them a little bit, and worst case scenario, if it's too low, I can air up my air shocks and keep it where it needs to be. So now we're going to get onto these lower control arms and try to get these bushings changed out. Got the lower control arm off the rear on the passenger side. Got it heating up with the torch. Once it starts smoking, I'll beat on it with a hammer and that thing should plop out of there just like the other ones that are down in there. Okay, here's the update. Got this control arm put back on, new bushing in, got this control arm off. It's over here on the bench. I heated these up and got these bushings out. Now I just got to go in here and clean all the excess rubber out of both of these holes with my little wire brush. There's the grease. Just push these new bushings in with some grease on them, and we'll be ready to put this one back in. In this box is my new shocks, so I'll be able to do the rears. Waiting on springs for the front still, since I messed those up, and I'm gonna try not to mess these up, but I'm gonna cut a coil off of the rear springs off the top to try to lower it a little bit. Get the back end sitting down level with where I want the front end to be. So we're gonna get these bushings pressed in on this side and then work on the springs. All right, we're all buttoned up under here. Got the springs put back in, got my new shocks on. Went ahead and ordered all 4, even though I just needed the front ones. These are KYB gas adjust shocks, so hopefully they're good. The air shocks were pretty bouncy, so those might be a little better. Here's what I cut off the springs, just one whole coil. So I'm gonna set this thing down and see how low it is. Hopefully it's not as low as the front, but it may have dropped an inch or so, and that's what I was going for. There's where it's sitting. Looks pretty good. It's a little bit lower than it was before. The front looks cool, not really drivable. So new springs should be here tomorrow, and we'll put them in, see what they look like, and see if we need to trim any off the new coils. Got the car up in the air. Got one of the springs out. You can see they only had 1.5 coils cut off, so I probably won't have to cut anything off these springs between the drop spindle and the new control arm, which is hanging down there with the rotor and all on it. Gonna get the spring compressor, which I went ahead and rented this time so I didn't have to fight with it, which is in that little box, and then get one of these compressed and throw it up in there and hopefully have this thing on the road or on the ground ready to be lined pretty soon. Alright, not sure where I left off. Got the springs in the car, sitting way too high. The suspension is maxed out right now, and I was going to cut them if they were too tall, but these ones, if I bounce up and down on the fender, it still doesn't even budge the spring. So getting ready to put this thing back on the lift, and I bought another pair of springs. So they are supposed to be for this car, which the ones I bought were supposed to be for this car the first time. So hopefully these are better. These here are the new springs. They're a smaller wire diameter. I think they're about the same length and everything though. So we're gonna get the car back on the lift, pull these springs out, put those springs on, and hopefully we're ready to get this thing lined so I can drive it again. Okay, got the new springs in, sitting a little high in the front, but I'm sure it'll settle an inch or so with time. But it's a lot better than it was because the suspension actually moves. Now we just need to get it aligned because I got some mad camber over here and nothing over here. But we'll get this thing up on the trailer, take it and get it aligned. Got the car back from being aligned, drives pretty good now. The only thing I need to change still, I'm gonna do a new steering box. Still got the original steering box up in the car, and it's got some play in it. So I'm gonna get a new steering box to put in here, probably the same one that we got in this car here, because it drives pretty nice. It's got a quicker ratio and all that good stuff. So got it up in the air because after I got it aligned, I realized that my hanger had fallen off. So I got me a new piece cut to go in here, and we're gonna weld that on the pipe. It's got a hole in it where the hanger ripped off. But these tailpipes are the original tailpipes that we got on that car, however many years ago that was. So I'll just keep cobbling them together until they won't stay on no more, and then we'll do something else. But that'll do it for this video. The suspension works pretty good. The new shocks, which are these KYB gas adjust shocks, they ride a little stiffer, which is good. It doesn't waller around as much in the corners, stays pretty in control. The steering just wobbles around a bit because of the steering box having some play, but I'd say overall it was a success. Just wish I wouldn't have had to change the springs 3 times. So that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment down below.